His name is Mr. Mum, and he lives in a cartoon world where almost anything can happen. For 19 years during the 50s and 60s, millions of daily newspaper readers were able to peek in on the strange world of Mr. Mum. And although he's been gone from the comic strips for more than a decade now, Mr. Mum is still around in the mind of his creator, Mr. Irv Phillips.
Well, I wanted to be a violinist. I didn't want to be an artist at all. I started out to be a violinist, and I got sidetracked. I studied music after I got out of high school, I studied music for about 3 years, and then I got a job with traveling shows and played popular music.
Irv traveled the vaudeville circuit as a performer and comedy writer until the Depression hit. Then he survived by selling gags to magazines. In fact, he sold so many gags to the editor of Esquire magazine that to save money, he hired Irv on as the cartoon editor.
One day he asked me, why don't you learn to draw? And I said, I hadn't thought about it. He said, well, I'll fix that. And he put me in the office with Eric Lundgren, the art director, and I was there with Eric for about 2 years, and I can thank him for what drawing ability that I have and what style that I developed there.
He went on to form a national feature syndicate, and soon his writing caught the attention of W.C. Fields, who lured Irv to Hollywood. Though things didn't work out with Fields, Irv quickly found work writing for radio, motion pictures, and eventually television. He wrote the first family comedy for television, a live show called The Ruggles. But after a few seasons, Irv left to try his hand at a new medium, playwriting. First, he wrote for colleges and small theaters, but eventually, one of his plays made it to Broadway.
I had a character in that play called Rumple. And Rumple, the character, was a cartoon character, and the star of the play was a cartoonist. And this was a cartoon character who materialized on the cartoonist's wedding night and caused a lot of farce comical situations. But it was quite a funny show. After the show closed, I decided that I didn't want to lose that little character, and I was going to try to continuing in a comic strip.
So the character of Rumple evolved into the gentleman we now know as Mr. Mum.
Mr. Mum is an observer, and more or less I suppose that he has a bit of my personality, because I like to, rather than be active in a situation, I would rather watch. And I suppose that is where that came from, because Mr. Mum never says a word, but he sees everything unusual that goes on. If you had a Mr. Mum in real life, I suppose he'd end up in the booby hatch, because he sees all these strange things, and many times other people don't see them. Yeah. Of course, Mr. Mum has a different view. You know, he thinks the world is crazy. That's the way. He thinks I'm a little offbeat, probably, and I think he's a little offbeat. But Mum got, in those 20 years, 19 years, he became quite real to me.
And Mr. Mum came to life for millions of children back in 1970 when ABC TV featured Irv Phillips' little character. The animated Mum came about the same time Irv decided to quit cartooning and get back to playwriting. He also thought he'd do some serious painting, but all that came out were more cartoons.
They weren't bad. I had a show a one-man show at ASU in the art gallery there, which was very successful. And I had one at Sedona, and in one of the art galleries there, and we sold 8 pictures in that week that we had the show up there.
And nowadays he has time for another old hobby, music.
I love to restore old instruments, violins, any kind of an old instrument that has been broken up, and if it's old, I like to put them together. And I've gotten so I'm not half bad at it.
Irv Phillips has now gone full circle. He spends his free time doing what he set out to do more than 40 years ago. The word retirement doesn't seem to be a part of Irv's vocabulary. In fact, he's getting a little bit restless lately, and so now he's working on a new character that he hopes will find its home in daily papers across the country. And knowing Irv, he'll probably succeed.